Friends, out of affection, may blind us with flattery and shield us from our flaws. Enemies, in their animosity, reveal our weaknesses with ruthless honesty, providing a clearer self-assessment. This is a fundamental paradox of human relationships. We are hardwired to seek approval and positive reinforcement, and our friends provide this in abundance. They celebrate our successes, overlook our mistakes, and offer comforting words when we are down. While this support is emotionally validating, it can also become a gilded cage, preventing us from seeing our own limitations. We become so accustomed to praise that we begin to mistake it for truth, leading to an inflated and ultimately fragile sense of self. This is not to say that a friend's praise is without value. It can be a powerful source of motivation and emotional support. However, when it is the only feedback we receive, it can lead to a dangerous form of self-delusion. A friend might, for example, praise a mediocre piece of our work out of a desire not to hurt our feelings. We might then believe that the work is truly excellent and fail to make the necessary improvements. In this sense, their affection, while well-intentioned, becomes an obstacle to our growth. The path to improvement is almost always paved with uncomfortable truths, and friends, in their kindness, may be hesitant to be the one to deliver them. Our enemies, on the other hand, operate under a completely different set of rules. They are not concerned with our feelings. Their goal is not to make us feel good, but to find our vulnerabilities and exploit them. They will dissect our work, our character, and our actions with a critical eye, not to build us up, but to tear us down. While this can be a painful experience, it is also an incredibly illuminating one. The enemy's critique, no matter how hateful or venomous, contains a kernel of truth. They will point out flaws that our friends would never dare to mention, and they will attack weaknesses that our friends would never even see. Consider a person who has a subtle but significant character flaw, such as a tendency towards arrogance. Their friends, out of loyalty, might ignore this trait or even interpret it as confidence. They would never risk the relationship by pointing out such a sensitive issue. An enemy, however, would see this arrogance as a prime target. They would criticize it, mock it, and use it against us at every opportunity. In doing so, they provide us with a kind of honest, brutal feedback that is impossible to get from a friend. They force us to confront a part of ourselves that we would rather ignore, and in that confrontation lies the potential for profound self-improvement. Ultimately, by learning to appreciate the honesty of our enemies, we are able to move beyond the flattering but incomplete view of ourselves that our friends provide. We come to understand that while a friend's praise is pleasant to receive, an enemy's criticism is often more valuable. The pain of the critique is a small price to pay for the clarity and self-knowledge that it provides. It is the beginning of a true self-assessment unclouded by affection or loyalty. Your enemies are, in essence, a mirror. Their criticisms and attacks are a precise map of your vulnerabilities, forcing you to confront and correct the shortcomings you may have otherwise ignored. This is the most profound lesson that an enemy can teach you. When you are in conflict with an adversary, they are not operating on a whim. They are seeking out your weak points, your blind spots, and the unexamined flaws that lie beneath the surface. They will poke and prod at every soft spot until they find the one that makes you react. This is not a pleasant experience, but it is a data-rich one. The pain you feel from their attacks is a signal, a flashing red light that says, here is a part of yourself that is unprotected and needs to be strengthened. But friends, by contrast, will often fail to provide this service. Out of loyalty, they may defend your weak points or, worse, ignore them entirely. They may refuse to see a flaw because they are attached to an idealized version of you. An enemy, however, has no such sentimental attachments. They see you as a target, and in their focused analysis, they will inevitably uncover truths about you that you have hidden from yourself. They will point out your strategic errors, your emotional vulnerabilities, and your intellectual blind spots with a clarity that is painful to behold, but essential for growth. That is the number R. They are a test that you didn't know you needed to take, and in their attacks, they provide the answer key. Consider the example of a person who is prone to impulsive, emotional outbursts. A friend might gently advise them to calm down, or they might even excuse the behavior as a sign of passion. An enemy, however, would immediately recognize this as a critical vulnerability. They would bait and provoke, knowing that if they can get you to lose your temper, they can defeat you. In this confrontation, your enemy is not just trying to hurt you, they are exposing a fatal flaw in your character. They are showing you in a very direct and undeniable way that your lack of self-control is a liability. This information, no matter how it is delivered, is a priceless gift. Furthermore, this confrontation with an enemy forces you into a state of heightened self-awareness. You must analyze their every move and understand their intentions. In doing so, you are forced to analyze your own reactions and your own weaknesses. You are no longer just living your life. You are studying it. You are asking, why did that attack work? Why did that insult hurt so much? What does this reveal about me? This introspective process, spurred by external conflict, is a powerful engine of self-knowledge. It transforms you from a passive participant in your own life into an active student of yourself. Ultimately, to learn from your enemies is to turn a source of negativity into a source of profound wisdom. It is to recognize that a person who wishes to do you harm is also a person who has taken the time to understand your weaknesses. By accepting their criticism, not as a personal insult, but as a form of brutal, unsolicited feedback, you gain an invaluable advantage. You are able to see yourself as others see you, and in that clarity, you can begin the work of correcting the flaws that were previously invisible to you. Genuine growth requires unfiltered feedback. Friends may temper their advice, but an enemy's critique is raw and unvarnished, offering invaluable insight into your strategic and personal weak points. This is because friends are often operating from a place of care and protection. They may fear that the complete, unedited truth might hurt your feelings, damage your self-esteem, or even harm your relationship. This well-intentioned censorship, however, deprives you of a crucial resource. The truth, in its purest form, is often uncomfortable, but it is also the most potent catalyst for change. Without it, you are left to operate in a state of partial ignorance, unaware of the flaws that are obvious to others. Consider a professional setting. A colleague who is a friend might give you a gentle, sugar-coated review of a presentation you delivered. They might say, it was really good, maybe just a few minor tweaks. An adversary, on the other hand, might say, the data was weak, the argument was illogical, and your delivery was unconvincing. While the friend's feedback feels better, that is the number R, the enemy's critique is infinitely more useful. It tells you exactly where you need to go back to the drawing board. It's the difference between a vague suggestion to do better and a precise roadmap of what to fix. The painful, unfiltered truth from an enemy is a gift of clarity that a friend, in their kindness, is often unable to provide. This kind of raw, unfiltered feedback is essential for avoiding a false sense of security. When we are surrounded by people who only tell us what we want to hear, we can easily become complacent. We might believe we are at the top of our game when in reality we are filled with weaknesses and vulnerabilities. An enemy shatters this illusion. They are the voice of reality, a harsh but necessary counterpoint to the chorus of praise. By forcing you to see your flaws, they save you from the painful embarrassment of having those flaws exposed at a more critical moment, perhaps when the stakes are much higher. Furthermore, an enemy's critique is often more objective because it is not clouded by affection. A friend may overlook a flaw because they like you. An enemy sees only the flaw. This makes their feedback, while biased in its intent, remarkably pure in its content. It is a form of data that you can analyze without having to untangle it from personal feelings or a desire to maintain a relationship. It is feedback for feedback's sake, delivered with a precision that comes from a focused desire to find a weakness. By setting aside the animosity, you can glean a strategic understanding of your own weak points that is impossible to get from an ally. Ultimately, learning to value unfiltered feedback is a sign of true maturity. It means you are willing to endure discomfort for the sake of growth. It means you understand that the goal is not to feel good all the time, but to become better. By listening to your enemies, you are not validating their hatred. You are simply taking the valuable information they are providing and using it to strengthen your own position. You are transforming their attempt to tear you down into a tool for your own construction. Dealing with adversaries forces you to become more strategic, resilient, and resourceful. It's in defending against a direct attack that you learn the true extent of your capabilities and the strength of your resolve. When you are in a state of peace, your mind and skills can become complacent. You operate on autopilot, using established routines that may not be the most effective simply because they have never been tested. An enemy, however, disrupts this complacency. They force you out of your comfort zone and into a state of heightened awareness. To survive their attacks, you must think on your feet, anticipate their moves, and develop a counter strategy. This is the intellectual equivalent of weight training. The resistance provided by the enemy is what strengthens your strategic muscles. This strategic growth is a direct result of being forced to think in terms of offense and defense. A person who has only known cooperation may never have developed a tactical mind. They might be skilled at building relationships, but they would be ill equipped to handle a betrayal or a direct assault on their reputation. An enemy, in their desire to tear you down, forces you to develop a robust defense. You learn to guard your vulnerabilities, to anticipate their moves, and to have a plan for every contingency. This process of building a defense is a profound form of self-development. You are not just reacting, you are becoming a more deliberate and prepared version of yourself. Furthermore, the pressure of a conflict reveals your true resilience. It's easy to be strong when everything is going well. The true test of your character is how you respond when you are under fire. An enemy's attack is a direct test of your mental and emotional fortitude. When you are criticized, mocked, or undermined, do you crumble or do you hold your ground? The act of persevering through an attack, even when it is painful and unfair, is what builds the kind of grit that is a prerequisite for any significant success in life. You learn that you are capable of enduring more than you thought possible, and this knowledge is deeply empowering. The necessity of outmaneuvering an enemy also forces you to become more resourceful. When your established methods fail, you are compelled to innovate. An adversary will not play by your rules. They will seek to exploit the weaknesses in your system. In response, you must become more creative and flexible. You might discover a new way of doing things, a hidden talent, or a new ally that you would have never found in a state of comfort. The pressure of the conflict forces you to look at your resources in a new light and to discover capabilities you didn't know you had. Ultimately, by forcing you to become more strategic, more resilient, and more resourceful, an enemy serves as a catalyst for profound personal and professional growth. They are a necessary form of opposition that prevents you from becoming soft and complacent. You do not wish for enemies, but when they arise, you understand that they are an opportunity. They are the friction that creates the spark, the pressure that forges the diamond, and the test that reveals your true strength. True self-reliance is built by trusting your own ability to learn and adapt, rather than relying on the opinions and support of others. A healthy skepticism of all external praise, friend or foe, is a sign of wisdom. We are often taught to trust our friends implicitly and to seek their validation as a measure of our worth. While this can provide a sense of security, it's a fragile one. When your self-worth is dependent on the approval of others, you become a slave to their opinions. You will make decisions not based on what you know is right, but on what you believe will earn their praise. This is not trust, it is a form of dependence, and it leaves you vulnerable to manipulation and self-doubt. True strength comes from building an inner compass that you trust more than any external voice. Learning from your enemies, therefore, is an act of liberation. It forces you to stop relying on the comforting, but often misleading words of your friends, and to start relying on your own judgment. When an enemy criticizes you, you must assess their words not for their intent, but for their content. Is there a kernel of truth in what they're saying, no matter how maliciously it's delivered? This process of sifting through a critique, discarding the venom and extracting the valuable information, is what builds intellectual and emotional maturity. It trains you to think critically about yourself, to become your own most reliable source of feedback. This is the beginning of a deeper form of trust, self-trust. This is the trust that comes from knowing in your core that you are capable of handling whatever comes your way, regardless of who is for you or against you. It is a trust built on a history of confronting your own weaknesses, not a trust built on the fragile foundation of external praise. That is the number R. The person who knows they can learn from their enemies is the person who is no longer afraid of opposition. They understand that every challenge, every critique, and every attack is simply an opportunity to become a better, more prepared version of themselves. Furthermore, this deeper form of trust frees you from the need for constant validation. You no longer have to perform for the approval of others. You can pursue your goals with a quiet confidence, knowing that your progress is a result of your own efforts, not a gift from your friends. This is not to say that you should not accept praise from friends, but rather that you should see it for what it is, a kind gesture, not a measure of your worth. That is the number R. It's the difference between a person who needs to be told they are strong and a person who knows they are strong because they have faced a test and passed it. In essence, by turning to your enemies for instruction, you are building an unshakable foundation of self-reliance. You are learning that your own judgment and your own resilience are more reliable than any amount of external support. This is the ultimate lesson of adversity. It forces you to find the strength you always had, but never knew you needed. It is a lonely path, but it is the only one that leads to true self-mastery. The wise person understands that opposition is a catalyst for improvement. By learning to see your enemies not as a curse, but as a critical component of your personal development, you transform animosity into a powerful force for good. We are conditioned to view conflict as a purely negative force, something to be avoided at all costs. But this perspective is simplistic and ultimately disempowering. Conflict, like friction, is necessary for growth. The resistance you encounter from an enemy is what allows you to become stronger, more strategic, and more resilient. Without that opposition, you would remain soft and untested. By reframing your view of adversaries, you are not celebrating their negativity. You are simply appreciating the valuable service they provide in making you a more formidable person.